Okay, so welcome everyone to our 19th 444 call. So Mofi had a spec update to discuss, but I guess at a higher level, just to put this in context, last time we talked about wanting to get the Chapella releases out and kind of use that as a foundation to build the future devnets for 444 on, and potentially chat about if those 444 devnets should just become the Denkun devnets and whatnot. So I think that's probably the main thing to chat about today, beyond the specific spec issue. If there's anything else, obviously we can always go over that. That's sort of what I had. But yeah, let's get into it. I guess Mofi, you posted this PR to the EIP that adds some checks. Do you want to give some quick context about it?
Yeah, sure. It's a pretty straightforward check. This is just an omission in the EIP. We're not validating the excess data gas, and hat tip to Marius for bring this up. So when it's possible to provide a block with an invalid excess data gas, but all the other block headers and transactions are valid, and that block gets accepted prior to this PR. Now this just fixes that such that that field is also checked. You did it correctly.
Got it. Anyone have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it seems like an oversight. It would be bad not to have this.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so I guess we can get this merged into the EIP. We probably just need the author to approve that PR. Okay. Yeah, so I guess next up, yeah, I'd be curious to hear from the different client teams. So now that we have the Chapella releases out, I know there's been some progress as well. I saw Andrew, you were sort of looking at this in the chat last week on the 444 implementations. I guess, where the client teams generally feel in terms of readiness. Does it make sense to, start targeting a DevNet launch that's built on top of Chapella in the next couple of weeks? Yeah, any teams have thoughts about that?
Yeah, I can give a quick update on the Prism side. So we have been working on the implementation, mostly on the free the blobs mechanism, because that's the one that has been taking the longest. So as of latest, so we can do local test net between Prism and Get, and then we can spam the blobs, process the blobs. We have blobs by root implemented and tested. Blobs by range is also implemented and tested. So we're working on this whole initial sync mechanism, such as we can sync from Genesis to the latest head, and that's what we're working on. So I think after that is done, we're pretty close to like a multi-client DevNet. We don't have backfill yet. That's something that we were working on, but I don't think that is the blocker. So right now, our main blocker is getting the initial syncing to work. So I do think target in a few weeks is fairly reasonable.
Thank you. Any other teams have updates?
Yeah, both Lodestar and Ethereum.js are ready and can do a multi-client DevNet. And basically, we already are running DevNet locally with Ethereum.js and Lodestar as a combo.
So for Lighthouse, we're at the point where we're trying to get something working locally, but we're not quite there yet. We have a couple like sort of features we're still working on, one of which is like making our caching smarter, more practical in bad cases. And then also we're working on like the mechanic of like single block or blob lookups in different scenarios, if you miss them in Gossip or if you're getting something via RPC, but not everything. So yeah, I think we're like close to having something working, but we're not quite there.
What do you think? I guess for a DevNet, multi-client DevNet, what is a reasonable timeline for you guys?
I think for us, like 2 weeks. I feel like we could get something running. Yeah, but I guess the further back it is, the better our implementation will be.
Right. And this would definitely be, well, I know it's not the first DevNet, but call it the first post Chapella DevNet and not the last, right? So, yeah.
The first free to blobs DevNet, I guess.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So not won't be perfect, but
Yeah. Okay.
So for Geth, basically we've not even started looking into it because Mofi and Roberto have been doing such great work. Peter has been working on the blob pool, on the transaction pool for blobs, and I think that netted a pretty nice implementation. But yeah, so I've been working on the on SSC library with what's his name? Sorry, Casey from the Prism team.
Listen,
Yes, and that also looks kind of good now. So yeah, we're doing like we kind of have the prerequisites down, and we should get someone on for it for soonish. Let's put it like that. But until then, we'll still like, yeah, it's great that we have the implementation by Roberto and Mofi, and we will probably build on that at some point.
Nice. Does Peter plan to put some sort of write-up around the transaction pool design when it's done? I know because he had the one from Austria, which was like all the constraints and like things to solve for. It would be nice if once the implementation is done, he could have the sort of all the solutions or like ways Geth has approached the problems.
Yes. So in his PR, he has a kind of a like a brain dump
Okay.
of ideas. I can link to that.
Yeah, if you have the PR, that'd be awesome.
Yes.
Thank you.
And or it might be I might have, I think I sent an old version.
Okay, yeah, because there's no comments in this.
Oh yeah, there are no comments. It's no, it's a comment in the code.
Oh, okay, got it.
This one should be the exactly the same thing. Anyway, but yeah, okay. I was already on the latest version, but basically it's a comment in the code in the blob pool line 128, and yeah, this is like 150 lines of comments, which explains some of the ideas.
Oh, awesome.
Do we, so we've had discussions around this before, around whether this stuff belongs in the spec or not, kind of these layer 0 types of things, exactly what we're doing with transaction pool rules. And another thing I think is the, do we add data gas field to the transaction receipt? Are these the kinds of things we put in the spec, or do we put them somewhere else?
Like the data gas in the receipts, that needs to be put in a spec. The transaction pool, not, in my opinion. And I think it's always better to have for these kind of things that are very like DOS critical. It's kind of good to have multiple different implementations. So for example, We had this issue on Gurley recently that we were getting DOSed, Geth was getting DOSed, but because Nethermind doesn't have these, like doesn't handle future transactions in the same way we do, like it didn't really matter to them. So having yeah more like different implementations of the transaction pool really makes sense to me.
I agree and disagree with the statement. So from how our transaction pool evolved, it was a lot different than Geth's in the beginning in terms of rules. Maybe internal like workings is very was still different, but in terms of the rules, but the rules evolved very similar to Geth. And the one thing that Marius is mentioning is the one place that we were more strict. But overall, because of security and performance reasons, our transaction pool actually converged to have more similar rules than Geth implementation, just from the practical reasons. And so we can like think that we can do blobs differently, but in the end, probably common sense would put us on very similar paths. That's from experience.
Yeah, I guess my concern is, clients need to know what the expectations are, right, around submitting transactions. I mean, maybe blobs are unique enough that people are sophisticated enough to figure out the quirks of different clients, but that was my main concern.
Yeah, so at least if we have the code well documented, like, I mean, the Nethermind team can obviously read the comments in the Geth PR, but it's true that we don't have somewhere for those like non-consensus design docs. Yeah. Marius, anything else on Geth?
No.
Okay. Any other teams have updates, thoughts they want to share?
Yeah, on the Nimbus side, I think roughly tracking what Lighthouse describes schedule-wise. I think in a couple of weeks seems feasible. Basically, a lot of stuff is kind of backed up going into PRs this week. The Free the Blob implementation is mostly done, but still needs to get submitted and merged. So I think yeah, a couple of weeks-ish seems within the realm of possibility.
Yeah, an update from Tego as well. We are working on different streams now in parallel, and mostly on the orchestration between the gossip blobs and lookups, and the arrival of the block, and also in the API signing flows. So there are still plenty of work and make everything glue together and do some internal tests. So yeah, 2 weeks seems to be tight at the moment. So yeah, maybe if we can't join the first version, we will join the second one.
For Aragon, thanks to Roberto, we have a draft implementation, but we have only started looking at the changes, understanding all the changes, and we've started merging them, but not like the entire PR in one go. We started merging it piecemeal, and it'll take us some time to take in all the changes.
Yeah, and Andrew, I'll do my best to get it merged with upstream this week. It's probably diverged because I haven't touched it in quite some time, but I'm planning to get on that.
Super, thank you.
Got it. Oh yeah, please. Yeah,
we'll be happy to join Devnet to check our textbook solution and improve it in the future. But we are ready, basically.
Thanks. Fabio?
Yes. On Besu's side, we are at Devnet 4 feature level at that point. So we need to check what we need to do after that. My understanding is that from the execution engine side, the number of changes is smaller. Hard to say if we can target 2 weeks. Depends on the priorities of the team that we are working on at the moment. There are some stability and the new features in development. So it's hard to say if we can hit the 2-week target at the moment. Need to check with the team.
Got it. Any other client team? I think that was everyone. Okay, and so Mofi has a comment in the chat about the next DevNet should be long running. So basically, I assume we probably aren't going to make any major spec changes. Obviously, if we do, we can reassess from there. But like, yeah, it does seem like the spec is in a pretty stable spot. So I agree that that's probably what makes sense to do, is to target, you know, the specs, assuming Mofi's change goes in with some minor change. And then potentially aim to get the first DevNet with like a subset of clients in the next 2 weeks. I don't know if it's possible before the next one of these calls or maybe right after. Obviously, we have the fork on mainnet scheduled a few days before the next of these calls. But I think that, you know, if by the next one of these we could be in a spot where if we haven't already launched the next DevNet, we are ready to. Ideally, we have like more than one EL and more than one CL just to make sure that multi-client stuff works. It seems like on the CL side, it should be possible. On the EL, potentially, if we're not running off, I mean, potentially we can get, you know, Geth and Aragon running off the branches, but it won't be running off master. But yeah, I think if we had like a free to blobs DevNet with 2+ ELs and CLs, would be in a spot where we can have something stable, gradually add more clients to it, and keep it running. Does that make sense to people? Oh yeah, Ethereum JS that could join. That's right. Yeah. So that would actually be great. Yeah. So one non-Roberto and Mofi implementation as well on the EL side. And I guess, okay, so yeah, from like Ethereum JS, non-go. Yeah, Ethereum JS, Geth, Aragon, and I guess Prism and potentially Lodestar. What's like the quickest we could launch this DevNet, do you think? Is this something we can do, you know, in the next week or so? Are there still some changes that we need to merge in or rebase? Like Roberto, you mentioned you need to rebase Aragon. Yeah, what do we think is like a reasonable target for?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can get it done this week. So maybe next week is a reasonable target if we just want those clients that seem to be reasonably ready for it anyway.
Cool.
Although the
Lodestar and Ethereum JS can be made ready at any moment. I mean, they're already ready, so I can cut the images on the latest code.
Okay. I don't know, Prism, Terrence, do you have a feel for if this is something like a week from now? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think we'll probably need like another week after that, so maybe 2 weeks.
Okay.
But yeah, like I said, more than feel free to even start without us. You can just, I think for us, we're fine gossiping blobs, but we might have initial syncing. So yeah. So I would say between 1 week to 2 weeks. Sounds reasonable.
Okay, so how about we try, and obviously it's going to be like a Easter weekend this weekend, so some people I suspect might be away a bit more than otherwise, but why don't we aim for like early next week to try and start setting this up? So this week we can do the changes to Aragon, kind of, you know, get the ELs in good shape, and then maybe early next week we try to launch this, see how it goes throughout the week, and then on our next call, if we can have an attempt to launch the DevNet, whether successful or not, I think that'll be good. In the best case, you know, we have a couple clients running next to each other, and others can gradually join in. In the worst case, there's something that didn't work, and we'll have time to debug it. But I think that seems reasonable. Cool. And obviously we'll have the CL call in the all core devs if there's the other all core devs if there's anything that that pops up before our next 4844 call. I think that's pretty much all I had. Anything else that people wanted to discuss?
What was the verdict on data gas and the receipt? There was some discussion in the chat. Should we just add that to our clients and not worry about putting it in the spec? Proto, I guess you had some comments there. I didn't quite understand if you were taking a position.
I think on the chat, it was pretty clear. It could just be metadata, something not affecting consensus.
Yeah, it's definitely not affecting consensus. That's why I was curious whether it belongs in the spec or not.
But should be, in the execution APIs, would it be there?
It will be in the execution APIs then, if we decide it's useful.
Yeah.
So are the other receipt fields that are considered metadata.
This is Andrew from Ethereum. When we erased this issue way back during Austria, that was where we decided to put it, was in the execution APIs. I just haven't gotten to actually opening the PR against the APIs on it yet. So I'd started that a while back and then got sidetracked with other stuff. So I can circle back to that and try to get that. And then in the API, get a PR open against the execution APIs. And I think we talked about we wanted to bring it up to the execution all core devs call before we do any I think Tim is, that's my recollection. I have to go back and look through this,
yeah, so I think we can definitely open the PR ASAP. It's good to mention it on all core devs just so people know it's there. I think the thing we should do as well, once we have that PR, this is probably a good opportunity. I don't know if the execution APIs can be linked in EIPs quite yet, but I know they wanted to do it at some point. So that would probably be a good opportunity to, once we have this PR up, we can potentially add it to the EIP itself, so we can mention in the EIP itself that, you know, the changes to the receipts are tracked there.
Okay, I'll try to get a PR. I mean, I think I already had written it up I just haven't ever pushed it to I'll try to get a PR up today or tomorrow, and then if I remember, I'll drop a note in the sharding channel on ETH R&D, and you can figure out how you want to go from there.
Cool. Anything else?
Did we want to shoot for any transaction pool specific denial of service goals for our DevNet, or should we just figure that out later?
What do you have in mind in terms of goals?
So I had posted, let me look it up. I had posted in the ETH Magicians forum, I made a couple proposals based on the discussions from the workshop. I'm trying to look it up because I can't remember exactly what it was. Oh yeah, here we go. Blob holding transactions should only be replaced by blob transactions consuming at least gas. And then there can only be one blob containing transaction per account. That protects against two specific denial of service vectors. I mean, I can go ahead and implement them in Geth and Aragon at least. Others can take it or leave it, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it would be good actually to have a draft, if you have the time, to have the draft implementation, like run it in the Devnet and see, do we, like, if we send a bunch of spam transactions, or, you know, in another case, do we see bugs or you know, any kind of unexpected issues based on that? And obviously we can revert the change without working the Devnet if we see issues. But I agree. We said we should try that, and it makes sense to do it. Yeah.
Cool. I'll do my best to get that.
Yeah. And I mean, similarly, if we're ready to launch a DevNet and we're just waiting on that, we can launch the DevNet without it and do the transaction pool change, upgrade the nodes, and see after. But yeah, I think it makes sense to aim for draft. Yeah, prototype implementation. Anything else? Okay, then I guess we can wrap up. And I think we did discuss this, I think a call or two ago, like how useful these calls are if like we've moved to like Denkun. I feel like they're probably still useful for at least a little while. So I would keep our like 2-week 4844 cadence. At least, I don't know, for the next call or two, and we can always like drop them after that. But it seems like as we're setting up the DevNets and kind of working through the initial implementations, it probably makes sense to have a bit more focused time on this. But I suspect in the next couple of months, as we're like fully into this as part of Denkun, maybe they're not as relevant. So yeah, at least the next 1 or 2, I think, are probably important to keep.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think.
Yeah.
Definitely the next one if we're trying to get.
Yeah, for sure the next one, and I suspect we'll probably want 1 or 2 after that as well. You know, once we have like the early DevNets and yeah.
What do you think the timeline is for the next fork? I mean, can't remember what the latest discussions are, but I'm just curious if there's been any discussion around that.
I don't know. I think the biggest question is so like obviously the work of doing 4844, and then is there like what else comes alongside it? I think on the last All Core Devs, there was a pretty strong desire, at least on the EL side, to not add anything that would like significantly delay. So for example, it seemed like for SSZ, we're probably leaning towards doing like not doing a full SSZ overhaul alongside 4844. There were some similar concerns about EOF, although it's not clear exactly where like the consensus is going to land there, but definitely every time something big comes up, it seems like the response is like, you know, will this significantly delay 4844? So yeah, I don't think we have like a set date or anything like that yet, but at least from my view, it's like people are aligned on not adding some other kind of huge thing that would make a big difference, but hard to say beyond that.
Yeah, that was my impression from the calls as well. I just was wondering if there have been other things that I wasn't privy to. So,
Alexei, you have a question like, what's the feedback from L2s? What do you mean in terms of the timeline, in terms of the EIP itself, in terms of?
It seems like solution we are developing. It requires like basic feedback from the main consumer, and
oh, okay, yeah, I see. So from the optimistic side, obviously Optimism has, you know, invested quite a lot in getting this to happen, and so has Coinbase. So I think, and we've gotten like really positive feedback from Arbitrum as well. So I think from the optimistic rollup side, like they're all quite on board. I think for ZK rollup sides, so you know, this is usable by them. So we've checked that like technically this provides good you know, scalability, but I think they might have like, this might not be the #1 thing they prioritize using as much as like optimistic rollups as soon as it come out. So I don't think any of the like ZK rollups have like an objection or like incompatibility with this, but their roadmap just seems like potentially less focused on like as soon as this is live, we're gonna shift everything to it, which is more the feeling I got from optimistic rollups. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty easy change to adopt too. Well, we haven't done all the details, but we've done like an initial hack of starting to do it.
Yeah. But yeah, and I think if there are, especially, I think this is more on the SDK side. Like if there are any that have problems, then like now would be the time for them to sort of step up and mention those. But we have done some outreach and like sent this to them several times in the past year, and yeah, there hasn't been anything that's come up like critical or blocking or anything like that.
I would say nothing critical from the option lab side. So we are implementing the Arbitrum protocol. But I do think like it's worth discussing more, maybe not on this call because this is more implementer. So it's worth discussing just like the data guess, essentially data guess, like what parameters to use and how often do we increase and decrease the percentage. And then there is like a research thread about this. And then Option Labs have a research team looking at this problem. We posted, Akaki posted his latest feedback. So yeah, we can bring any further discussion to this research forum, but I think for layer 2, it's very important to figure out those like parameters.
Got it. Do you think we should discuss this on the CL call this week?
So I'm
like,
interested at who are the right audience.
Yeah.
Right. I think like whoever wants to comment on the research forum. I don't think like most of the Okra DevCo has the right audiences, right? Because the right audiences will be people from the rig team and representative from the layer 2 teams as well. And I don't think they mostly show up in this type of implemented calls.
Yeah. Okay, we can definitely try and like pass this along to get broader feedback in the next couple of weeks from L2s and the rig folks. Yeah. Cool. Anything else?
Alexi asked, so there's no chance that things like blob size or count block will be changed.
I keep forgetting. Is our limits 1.2 or 2.4 right now?
2.4.
2.4. Yeah. So I would be extremely surprised if it got changed to the upside. I doubt that would happen. I could see a world where like if we do some tests and whatnot, because there were I believe some networking tests that were run and that showed that like there was some delays with large call data blocks. They weren't huge, but they were kind of noticeable. So like I think if there were to be a change, it might be possible to go from like 2.4 to 1.2, but aside from that, I would be very surprised. I don't know if anyone else has thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think I haven't heard any huge worries about the current numbers. So, although having the only change that I think would make things a little simpler is to just say that there's one blob per transaction. That kind of makes transaction pool issues management a little easier, but I'm not proposing that. But it wouldn't surprise me if it came up.
Oh, right. So we've removed, okay, got it right. So we've removed 0 blob transactions, but we can still have 2 blob transactions. Yeah, or more. Yeah.
Which makes mempool management a little bit, I mean, like, right, if you have a transaction with, 3 blobs versus 2 transactions with 2 blobs.
Yeah. Is there a use case from layer 2s to have more than 1 blob per transaction? I guess if the batch is bigger than like one tail fit in 1 blob, but that seems kind of weird because.
And then you can always submit 2 transactions, right? So.
Right. Yeah. Actually, yeah. But I don't know, Proto or Cadence, like from the optimism or Arbitrum side, can you think of a use case like that?
So Optimism, at least with the next upgrade, does support arbitrarily splitting of data between multiple transactions. I think the bundling feature where multiple blobs are linked in a single transaction is something that's more useful to the ZK rollups.
Okay.
So yeah, again, like we should ask them for more feedback. They are not as active in this call.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try and see maybe if we can get some ZK rollups people to look at the latest specs and share any feedback. Cool. Anything else? Okay. Then we can wrap up. Talk to you all in 2 weeks, and let's try and stand up the Devnet early next week. We can use the Discord to coordinate that.
Great. Thanks.
Cool.
Great.
See ya.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you guys.
Yeah.